Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life After the Military, a show completely focused on veterans transitioning from military to civilian life. Our show is powered by Pivotal Moments Media, an organization on a mission to strengthen mental fitness for all. Go check them out at pivotalmoments.org to learn more. My name is Lee Elias, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Howie Cohen, and we are privileged to have Command Sergeant Major retired Gerald Tyce with us today. Command Sergeant Major Gerald Tyce had an exceptional 33-year career serving in the United States Army Signal Corps as a non-commissioned officer and leader. Gerald retired from military service in 2014 and took several positions with government contracting firms such as the Camber Corporation, IAP Worldwide Services, and Peraton, where he currently works as the operations manager for the Army Enterprise Information Technology as a service contract. Gerald is a passionate and exceptional military leader, and we're honored to have him on here today as a guest on Veterans Day of all days. Gerald, welcome to Life After the Military.
Thank you, Lee, and thank you, Howie, for having me.
No, look, the pleasure's all ours, and as we said, it's Veterans Day. I honestly can't think of a better way to be spending Veterans Day than talking to two veterans that I have an immense amount of respect for and doing this show. And again, if you're listening to this show, thank you so much for being here. We hope that it provides some value. But Gerald, it's your time today. And I want to start today by asking you about your exceptional military career. Again, it culminated as Command Sergeant Major in the U.S. Army. Share with the audience some things you did during your service, how they molded you and shaped you, and how your service made you the person that you are today.
Okay, thank you. Again, thank you for having me. And I will tell you, I just want to take a moment just to say happy veterans to all the veterans who served. Thank you for your service and your continued service to our great nation. Very, very much appreciated. And enjoy your day. Enjoy Veterans Day. Celebrate, your service. But it's just a little bit about me. I would tell you my journey and my process in the military started when I was at South Carolina State University. I was a major in electrical engineering, and I found the ROTC department. And first 2 years, I kind of took it for granted. But the third year, I got a little bit serious about, ROTC in the military and my fit. And so I actually went to the advanced course at Fort Bragg to become an officer. And I did exceptionally well, against my peers. And so I said, hey, this is a thing I really like doing. What I didn't know is I didn't have a whole lot of money left to go to college. And so I didn't finish college, and I enlisted into the Army. And that's where my journey really started. I had a good firm background from ROTC that led me to coming into the Army. Once I got in the Army, it was two non-commissioned officers, and both of them were from Fort Bragg. They were in the 50th Signal, Edward Jackson and Ernest Vincent. And these guys were paratroopers. And I said, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. I had already experienced some of Fort Bragg, but when I saw them and they harnessed me and they grabbed me and they started directing me, I knew from that point on, it wasn't about being an officer anymore, about being a non-commissioned officer and serving. They taught me a lot of different things as a young man and as a soldier. So they kind of molded me to become a non-commissioned officer. Once I became a non-commissioned officer and they got me to Fort Bragg, that's where everything started taking off for me. I started surrounding myself with guys who were scoring high in PT, who were doing the right things as far as elevating their career, but also understanding the meaning of being a non-commissioned officer. No one is more professional than I, the creed of the Corps. And I bought into it. Once I bought into it, the rest of my career was pretty much easy. It was just different stepping stones I took. A lot of the organizations that I served in, particularly on Fort Bragg, being at 35th Signal, 112th Signal, 369th, all these different organizations that I was a part of, I would tell you, molded me to being a non-commissioned officer. The transition from being a non-commissioned officer to being a senior non-commissioned officer and then becoming a command sergeant major, I was always nurtured and mentored. And so I was mentored initially by Vietnam vets. Our Vietnam vets are underappreciated for what they did for us. But what they did for my generation is they taught us how to train. You knew your job. Now, Howie can attest to this right here in the 112 signal. If you did not know your job, you didn't get to go on any missions. And that was important to be able to be a part of a team and be productive. So you had to know your craft. And the Vietnam vets taught us how to know our craft. They taught us how to train. Now, they weren't the most educated guys, but guess what? They knew how to train. We got education, and the Army grew as far as the NCOES, as far as educating our non-commissioned officers. So with doing that, I grew as a soldier, and I was trained. So that made me very, very well-rounded, as I continue to grow in the Army. So deeply appreciated to the Vietnam vet era. Officers, I had great officers. I'm looking at Howie Cohen, and I've always looked at him from afar. And first class guy. Couldn't ask for a better leader who served at every level, extremely smart, extremely intelligent. And all commanders, we wanted to ensure we made their vision become reality. And hopefully, Howie, we did some of that for you, particularly in the 112.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so we appreciate you as officers as far as leading us and having a vision. And from those visions, from some of my past commanders, that allowed me to start becoming a visionary. No, not just seeing for the day, but seeing way ahead and planning and executing and building a team to do that. That's important in our Army today. It was important during my time, and I continue even now to mentor soldiers, okay? Not to look for the day, but be a visionary, and then put a plan in place and execute it accordingly. So I've been always good at doing that, building teams. I've had great friends, the AC Coleys, the Mark Cliftons. We deployed in some of the most austere environments in the world. But knowing that we had a team that was trained to do anything that was said in front of us, it made the job easier because we could look to our left, look to our right, and guess what? We knew we were going to produce a product, and the product was going to be a pretty good product.
Well, hey, Gerald, first of all, thank you for your very thoughtful comments. I really appreciate it. I think a little overstated for me, but and there's no doubt in my mind that you've been a tremendous teacher, coach, and mentor to many young soldiers, NCOs, and officers as well, helping them grow, develop, and achieve their personal and professional goals. And look, you achieved this tremendous amount of success in your career as a command sergeant major at the battalion, at the brigade, and at the command levels. So and again, on this day, Veterans Day, thank you for all that you contributed, both while in uniform, and I'm sure what you continue to do out of uniform, even to this day. As Lee stated, you retired in about 2014. So what I'd like to now do is kind of shift to your transition, how you prepared for your transition from the military. And what I would really appreciate is you sharing with us and our audience, things that you did to prepare that went well, maybe things that did not go well. And as you look back on it, if maybe you do something different, based on what you know now, what would you do differently to make that more successful and to help those who are going through that process now?
That's a very, very good question. When I retired, Howie, I was on E. I was one of those non-commissioned officers that worked up until the very, very last day. I never thought about transition. We've been built to serve and serve continuously. Almost like a 50-meter target. It never becomes a 300-meter target where you start preparing for it and really looking down the road. And so for me, it was difficult for me, and I knew within myself mentally that I could not transition into a job, another job, and be able to give and give a good product. And that would have been disrespectful and probably not the right thing to do at that time. So for me, I needed to take some time off, okay, for my mental health and my mental fitness. I took 2 years off. I took 2 years off to concentrate on me and to find what I wanted to do as far as transition. Now, I always knew that I wanted to continue to serve, and I'll call contractors soldiers in slacks. And that's what I really, really embraced. I still wanted to serve. I wanted to be near the soldiers. I wanted to be near the environment. I needed to be near the culture. So I took 2 years off and I focused on what I wanted to do once I came back into the work environment. And so contracting was very, very enlightening to me. It was inviting to me. And so I did my homework. And I think that's some of the things when you transition, there's so many unknowns. And when you have unknowns and uncertainties, it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. Well, I've always shared that being uncomfortable sometimes is a good thing, because when you're uncomfortable, it makes you focus and makes you interact and it makes you do your job a whole lot more efficiently. So I started doing my homework as far as defense contracting. And I wanted to be able to align myself with a company that had the same Army values that I grew up with. And I think that's important for folks who are considering transitioning out of the military, making sure you align yourself with companies that you're comfortable with and they have the same value system. When we came in, we had a brotherhood, like we shared before. That transition is not necessarily so in the civilian sector. It's a different focus. However, you can closely align yourself with some of the mission statements, some of the objectives that companies have, so you can interact and you can kind of embrace a little bit, easier. A lot of defense companies out there, they want your expertise. And I would tell all transitioning members, don't underestimate your value. Don't underestimate what you bring to the table. So when defense contractors are recruiting you, know that you have a set of skills that a lot of people don't. And I think that brings a lot to the table. And so my mental fitness and my mental health was most important as I transitioned. A lot of us don't get help for mental health, and we struggle. But I will tell you, there's a lot of different things that we can do that can help our mental fitness. One of the things I did in my 2 years, I started playing golf at 52. Never picked up a golf club. Now I'm able to go out and play golf just about every 2 or 3 days. And it helps me as far as my mental fitness. It's a sanctuary for me now. It gets me away from the hustle and bustle. The deployments, they take tolls on you. And if you don't think they take tolls, they do. They do. And I saw that when I retired. And so that's how I was able to recover. I was able to find different venues to kind of, interact myself with and ensure that I'm doing right for Gerald. For the first time, I was able to put Gerald first and not leave Gerald behind. I was able to concentrate and get the right skills to interact, and be effective and produce a product in the defense world. Camber was my first job. Didn't know what to expect. They had a few veterans and they embraced me and they taught me and they molded me the same concept as when I first came in as a young private. And so that was very, very welcoming to me, to be around folks who they embrace what I had done for the last 33 years. they accepted my expertise. You know, I was a part of a team and we were able to grow. So Howie, hopefully I answered your question good enough.
Well, I guess the first question I have for you to just kind of follow up on that, Gerald, and I appreciate everything you just shared, is if it's unique that it's rare that we find someone who's taken time off and as much time as you did. How did you do that? Because 2 years is quite a bit of time, and I know not everybody might be in the financial position to be able to do that. So I'm curious. I think it's great that you did take some time and you took some, to recharge the battery, kind of focus yourself, do the research you felt you needed to do to prepare yourself for your next step. What I think many of our audience are probably curious about is how could you afford to take that time? And I think I think they'd be interested in hearing about that.
Well, two things. First, you stay up on the net. When I say stay up on the net, I mean, I still was associated with AFCEA, AUSA, all the different organizations that I have become a part of over my 33 years. I didn't drop that. So I still interacted with all the different events that were going on in the Army. If a AUSA conference, I would still come up to all the TechNet conferences. So I stayed up on the net. So my name never went away. I never went away. I might have been 2 years of not working, but I never went away. I was still in the community. I still spoke to Mark, quite often in the offices, the Maria Barrett's. I still had communications going on. So I understood signal and I never left that. The second part, as far as financially, is not how much money you make, it's what you do with your monies. I was fortunate enough when I was a young E5, I had an uncle who took me to the side, and he was a private veteran. And he did savings bonds, and he sent savings bonds to my sister. Every Friday, we would go to the mailbox, and we would see a $25 savings bonds. And so as soon as I made E5, he said, "Hey, we're going to put you on a plan." And I listened to his plan, and I invested in his plan. Every time I got promoted, I would have to take at least a portion of that promotion and use it for savings. Now, it was times that it was tough. And, you start having a family and it's a little bit tough to save money. But he made me focus on savings. And I had a sergeant major, his name was Sergeant Major Kawita at Fort Bragg. And we walked in and he said, "If you don't have 2 times your base pay in the bank, you're wrong." I said, "Wow, I don't have that."
Ted Guida?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. He was the I forgot he was a command sergeant major of the 35th as an infantryman, right?
Yes, and he went on to become the 18th Airborne Force, CSM.
Yep.
And he did all the in-briefs when you came in, for newcomers. And the first thing he said as a young E5, he said, "If you don't have 2 times your base pay in the bank, you're wrong." And the story was this right here that's really funny. I met the 2 times base pay, and I saw him on Fort Bragg. And I said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I got my 2 times my base pay." And I was a Sergeant First Class. And he said, "Well, if you're a Sergeant First Class, now you should have 4 times your base pay." And so I went back out and I started again. I got 4 times my base pay. The next time I saw him, I was a sergeant major. I said, "Hell no, I'm not going back in there and talking to him."
10 times at that point. Gerald, I think there's a few things you're bringing up that I want to reiterate for the audience. One is that obviously financial security is very important. It's very hard to think about when you're young. There's not a tremendous amount of education out there for military or non-military on finance and understanding, how to be financially secure for your future. But it is very important. And, I'll say this too. Obviously, the earlier you start with it, the better, but it's never too late to start. So if you're listening out there and you have no financial acumen, search some out. It's incredibly important, especially when you get older, when you head towards retirement. You're going to want there to be something there for multiple reasons, whether it's your body's not working or you just don't generally want to work anymore. The other thing I want to bring up, Gerald, and Howie, it's starting to become amazing to me that, look, there is no finite number on how long it should take someone to prepare or that someone needs post or pre-transition to be ready. But we are hearing a lot that 2 years seems to be an appropriate amount of time for a lot of people. And again, I always equate transition to kind of having your first child. You're never really ready, right? Doesn't matter what you do to prepare, you're never actually ready. But we are hearing this a lot. This kind of 2 years, it's taking people 2 years to go from start to finish to a point where at least they feel somewhat comfortable again. And again, you've echoed that, even though it was post-transition. I think it's amazing that you had the financial stuff there. I think that's great. But still 2 years to focus on yourself, 2 years to make sure that you're mentally where you want to be before your eventual, as you said, picked up in 2016 in government contracting with when you became the director of business development with Camber. So lead us up to this. You kind of led us up to this in the last question. You know, you talked about culture and you wanted to serve still. Why was that the right place to land in the private sector?
I think the capabilities that they had. At one time, I was over in Kuwait. I had the 160th Signal Brigade. And I toured all of Southwest Asia. And I went to a place called Bahrain. Now, when you hear Bahrain, you start thinking, well, man, that's really nice. You know, it's a nice spot. Well, guess what? We got some forces over there. And when you look right across the water, guess what's standing there? It's called a place called Iran. And when you go and you see our soldiers and you say, well, how long do you have to respond if, you know, if attack comes, you know, if you have any problems on the net, you know, what do you need? How long do you have to respond? And the young man said to me, he said, we got about 30 to 60 seconds to respond, or we in trouble. When he said that, that told me how important defense contractors are to us and what they bring to the table. And so when I went to Camber, I wanted to see the capabilities that they had that allowed them to be able to service our soldiers, both in training and operationally. And they had capabilities that I could embrace. Virtual training for our soldiers that no longer, if you know, you need a PowerPoint slide, you can do it virtually, everything on a phone, you know, that they can look up and they can find, you know, what kind of products are you producing as far as solutions that will enable our soldiers to be able to respond to anything. Those things were important, and those are things that Camber brought to the table. And so that kind of lured me toward them. And I like working in that environment. And in any environment, you want to continue not to just come in, you want to grow.
Right.
You want to develop, and you want to be able to transition that development into a product. And I think that was the thing that spurred me. How can I develop in this organization? How can I align myself with their cultures, their values, their mission statement in order to produce a product for our soldiers and sailors and airmen?
What I love about your answer, and I want everybody listening to understand this, is that you interviewed them as much as they interviewed you. And I think that that's something that really not enough people do, is that those interviews should be two ways, right? Well, look, depending on your position, you may need a job, want a job, just be looking. But I always say you should always interview the organization as well. What kind of culture do you have? What kind of capability do you have? Am I a good fit? Because, and how we can talk, we've talked about this with several guests. If you get a bad fit, it can be a pretty miserable experience. And a couple questions could have just, you know, helped you with that. I also have to tell you this, Gerald. It's funny you bring up that story about being so close to Iran. I remember when I lived in England, I cannot remember the name of the RAF base, but I went to one of the easternmost World War II bases on the island, and I could see France. And I remember thinking, again, and it is World War II, so it wasn't 30 seconds, but I remember thinking, at some point, the entire German Empire was there looking across the water, and it freaked me out. It's like, what would you do? And again, it probably would have only taken an hour to go across the channel, but that freaked me out to the point of I realized in that moment, you know, one is how fortunate we are to live in America, bordered by two oceans. Obviously, it's going to take a minute for anybody to come here by water. But two, the bravery of people like you and the World War II soldier, and really all soldiers, to have to stare down an enemy, right? Like, if you've lived on the continental US your whole life, we have no understanding of that at all, right? You may have some Civil War background. Maybe I've been to Gettysburg, but I don't think about it like that. Is what I was thinking about an invading force. So, I just wanted to share that story because I remember the first time that hit me, and I had to go overseas again to see that. So, I really admire that triggered you into that thought process, right? Of, wow, I need to work in defense, because of my understanding of this. So again, thank you for that answer. And again, I just want to reiterate, interview the companies that are interviewing you. There's nothing, in fact, I'm an employer. I can tell you right now, when someone asks me about my team culture, I actually really appreciate it as the interviewer, because it tells me, their value set, that they're not just interested in getting paid, right? It tells them that they actually care about the team, which is an asset. It's a question that creates an asset. And three, it's obvious we can mold and have a discussion, right? So I think that's great that you took it upon yourself to make sure that happened.
Yeah, I will add one more to that, Lee. And for transitioning members, service members, know that you're always being interviewed. When you go to a TechNet conference and you're going around and you're picking up balls and pins and all this kind of good stuff, take the time. That's your opportunity to interview them. Because they're interviewing you, because they're looking at your skill set and they want to bring you into their organizations. But you have to also take the time to get to know the companies that are out here and if they're doing great things. So take the time at these conferences to actually interact with vendors and industry, and you find out a whole lot. Information now is easy to access. With that being said, go out and do the research on those organizations also.
Well, and what you're reinforcing there, Gerald, which I think is so important, again, that's been a recurring theme, is the importance of networking, right? I mean, you developed a very deep and broad network when you were in the military. You want to certainly continue to build that network outside the military and leverage the network you had in the military. So I couldn't agree with you more. Every opportunity you can have to expand and deepen your network, absolutely take advantage of that. I think that's great advice. Hey, so one thing I'd like to ask you. So you went right into business development, though, in your first government contracting position. How much of a challenge was that for you? Because some folks don't really handle that very well. So I'm kind of curious that you took a business development position. You had it for about 2 years or so. How did you adjust to that challenge of working business development in the defense contracting world?
Well, Howie, same approach as that we had in the military. Anytime you move from one position to the next position, you're in a learning phase. I still go by the L's, and that's listen, learn, and then lead. So I had a learning curve. And so when I walked into the office, the first thing I said, hey, I got 90 days. And so it was always hard work, long hours, putting in the work, no different, the same ethics, the same kind of commitment that we had in uniform. It basically transitioned over. When I moved from one position as a command sergeant major to the next position, I knew for the first 190 to 120 days, I had short-term goals and long-term goals. Now, to say it was an easy transition, I'm not saying that. It's a different language. You have to learn the business language of being a business developer. And so you have to go back and you got to study, you got to get trained up. You got to take ITEL 3, ITEL 4. You have to take the PMP course so you can understand the environment that you're working in if you want to be effective. So the networking piece was easy for me. I had the network, but understanding the principles of business, okay? How you go about pricing, costs, being a capture manager, a proposal manager, putting that all together is certain pieces of the pie, and you have to put it together. So you have to be smart. Some you have to reach out, Some you have to learn. And so other guys who've been in BD, Leith Benedict was my first boss, and Leith had the 25th. And so I could call him and I could say, hey, Leith, I need you to run this down to me. No different than when we were in the military. We needed to find some information. You've called down the street, you call this person to find out to make you productive. If you don't put a product out in civilian sector in BD, guess what? You won't be around very long. It's a sexy title, but it's a lot of work that has to be done with it. And from the outside looking in, if you're not willing to put that same type of work in, then you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, so I think a good learning point here is that, like you said, you had a tremendous skill set from the military to bring to bear in terms of leadership, management, operational experience. But and I had the same challenge. Is I was very, very weak on the business skill sets and the operational business type of knowledge, and it took me a while to learn, grow, and adjust to that. But it sounds like you had a leadership team that understood that and gave you time to grow, develop, and learn. I assume they must have had some formal training that they put you through as well as a business developer, or was it pretty much you? Okay, and that's great that maybe they had some internal training programs that they could take you through. And so if you're seeking a position like that, that might be another criteria that you want to evaluate for the companies you look at, is what kind of training programs does the company have that can help you with that transition and set you up for success. So that's great that you brought that out, Gerald. I really appreciate that. So let's move on then, because you then transition over.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you a quick? I have a quick follow up on what you just said. I apologize. Yeah. Gerald, could you, since you had the training, can you maybe go over the and Howie, you might be able to answer this too. Maybe like the 2 or 3 things that stood out in that transition training, or the training that the company provided that maybe made you feel better. I think it's an important question to ask for employers, right? Of like, what can employers do on their end to make that a better experience for you?
Well, again, I transitioned everything that I learned from the military to business.
Right.
And one of the things I did, I looked at training, okay, in the growth. I didn't want to just come in and be a business developer forever. I wanted to be able to grow in the company. And they had to show me some steps that I needed to take, okay? And that was the training program. The training programs have to be where you can go in and you can learn and you can grow and develop. The difference here, I think, that we're really looking at is large companies versus small companies. Large companies have the capabilities of giving you training programs, and they can nurture you a little bit better. Smaller business companies just don't have the budget. And so that's a part, again, of aligning yourself as far as selecting what kind of company you're going with. If you're going, I don't want to call any particular companies out, but large companies, they're going to expect a certain product in a certain amount of time. And if you don't have a training program, it's going to cause your learning curve to be even higher. I went to the PMP boot camp. I was studying it for 2 years while I was not working. And so when I went to the boot camp, guess what? I was able to embrace everything. I kind of understood that. So some things that we need to do internally too, in addition, here's a good example. Syracuse.edu for veterans. You can go there and you can get just about any certification you want to for free.
Wow.
But how many people know that?
Right.
And the good thing about it is this right here is funded. It's almost like a fellowship. And they will not allow you to go past one gate until you pass that gate. And so you're able to pass the test at the end of the day because you've gone through all the different gates. Those are some of the things that we can do. We can ask for training. and we can look for training, but what have we done? What kind of work have we done to make sure that we're ready for this training? This training is going to enable you to be more effective in your job, okay, and still be able to grow. We still have to take training. I just took the ITEL 4 course. So just like in the military, education and training is a gradual process. Through every step you go through, you have an educational and a training process that you have to meet. And so hopefully I'm answering your question as far as what you're asking.
Yeah, I think you did. Howie, I apologize for interrupting. That question just popped in my mind of, every organization is a little bit different with how they accept veterans, right? So just to build on that, Gerald, like I'm a small business, right? And the way I did that was just to have a conversation with the veteran, not an interview style, like a real just, person to person conversation about, what do you feel that you're bringing to the table? How can we organize your day in a way that's optimal for you? I mean, look, you should be doing that with all your employees, not just transitioning military. But what we really did, and look, the other thing too, I think was this, Gerald, and on my end, was that we provided all the training, we provided anything they needed to feel comfortable in the work. But I also had to kind of mentally talk about the mental fitness of an entrepreneur. Say, okay, what's an appropriate amount of time for leeway, right? Because this person's not going to come in 2 days from now be doing the job perfectly, right? So I kind of put like a 6 month, which I think is a fair amount of time for any job, a 6 month cap of, okay, in 6 months we're going to revisit this, but I'm not going to be overly critical about anything until that point. And almost on a dime, 6 months flowing, by far the best person we had at that position, understanding, but I went out of the way to have conversations. I asked, this is another thing, you just mentioned this. This actually kind of pisses me off a little bit with employers. I offer my employees education whenever they want it. I said, if you find a course that you want to take that's obviously beneficial for the job, but I'm not going to just send you to school for anything, bring it to me. I want to know about that. I'd be stupid not to pay for it if I have to, assuming that it makes sense, or provide it, right? Because it's going to help everybody, right? We don't do that enough as employers, right? Or we mandate education, which is never fun, right? So like, and what that created, Joe, was accountability on my team. They're actively looking for ways to get better and working together. So I just wanted, I wanted to ask that question for two reasons. One is I wanted your point of view on it. I wanted to share my point of view on it, because again, employers play a role in this as well. It's not just the military. And the last thing I want to say is I'm glad you brought up Syracuse, because one of the big, I don't want to call it failure, Howie, I don't know the right word to use here, but one of the big letdowns is how many resources there are for veterans that veterans just don't know about. And the attitude, I think, has been from the civilian side of like, well, just look it up. And it's like, it's just not the full picture there. There does need to be some initiative. I don't disagree with that, but like you spoke about the Vietnam vets and your revere for them. Like I look at all vets like that. Like we should be handing them this stuff at some point of here's everything you could possibly need to succeed. And then the accountability, which they'll take, is on them to take that step to find the next step, but they don't even know about it. They're not even aware of it. That's one of the reasons we created the show, is to share those resources and to share that just, hey, it doesn't take much to find them. But we definitely need to make them more visible as a society and as armed forces, if I may say.
And we're getting better.
Yeah, and absolutely.
We'll continue to get better. The education process, one of the things you talked about earlier, as far as like financing and the education for finance.
Right.
And we now have programs where folks, young privates coming out of school, they're getting finance classes as privates. They're starting to understand TSP and all the different ways to build from that. So we will continually get better. The transition information, when we transition, a lot of folks, they had the opportunity to take, I had the opportunity to take a lot of transitional courses, but I elected not to. We got to make sure that they take those type of courses.
Right.
And I think we will continue to get better, but it's a growth and it's a development stage, and we got to get us to a sustainment stage where everybody knows all the different organizations and different resources that are out there that they're entitled to.
Right. It's funny, Howie, I was going to say this to you, is that we'll know that what Gerald is saying is succeeding because every 2 or 3 episodes, Howie, you and I hear a resource we didn't know about and we go, oh, I didn't even know about that. So we'll know we're succeeding when someone says stuff, he goes, yes, we know about that one. That's a great one, and that they're listed out. And that's part of our overall mission here. But yeah, Gerald, thanks for bringing up those great points and sharing that because I think it's an important piece of the puzzle to the whole military transition.
Well, and listen, I would be remiss if I didn't say too, and Gerald, I appreciate your focus and dedication and commitment to your military service. But to be very honest, I think it's a mistake for a leader and at any level to not take the time to prepare for their transition while on active service. And I'm not saying, look, and this is not meant to be critical. Look, we're all guilty of we're in a leadership, especially if you're in a leadership position, whether officer, senior non-commissioned officer, or whatever. We feel a tremendous amount of commitment to our soldiers, to our organization, to our mission. But the fact of the matter is, we also have to have that same kind of focus and commitment to ourselves and our family. And although it worked out well for you, Gerald, and I'm very glad it did, it doesn't always work out well for a lot of folks. So if you have an opportunity, and I'm not saying that you don't do your job in uniform at all, but if you have an opportunity to at least start doing some planning, start doing some preparing, start doing some preparation, whether it's 2 years out, 18 months out, certainly a year out, I highly encourage folks to do that. And another great resource that wasn't even available when I was getting out, and I don't know if it was when you were or not, Gerald, but the DoD SkillBridge Program, it gives you the opportunity while you're still on active duty, getting paid by the military, you can actually, whether you take advantage of an existing program or you go out and set one up for yourself. And if you recall, we've had a guest, Jeff Worthington, talked about that. It's an episode that'll come out here in the near future. But I think it would be a great opportunity lost if you don't seek out the DoD SkillBridge Program and how you can leverage that, where you can work possibly 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a corporate private sector setting, whatever it may be, while you're still getting paid by the military. But now you can actually start learning some of the business concepts that Gerald was referring to earlier. That's another great program that exists today that I would highly encourage our veterans to seek out and leverage if that appeals to them. But anyway, I really want to continue to pursue your transition. So you went from the military to Camber, and then after about 2 years, you then moved over to IAP Worldwide Services, and you now took a position as a program director. So now you're more in an operational mode as opposed although depending on the size of the company, I understand everybody's responsible for business development, but I would love for you to, because really what I want to do, Gerald, is give folks who are interested in government contracting as a possible option for employment. I want to help them understand some of the different positions out there that they may seek or be interested or want to at least learn about. And so I want to kind of leverage your experiences what you did as a program director and kind of lay that out for folks who might be looking for an operationally focused job in the private sector. What you did, how you did it, what your responsibilities were, and I'm sure your military experience really played to bear there as well.
That's a great question. When you're a program director, and again, I transitioned everything from the military to the civilian sector. When I look at my NCODP plan or your ODP plan, that's a program. We run programs in the military, but we don't define it as a program. And so once I was able to understand the different facets in the industry, business development as far as being VP of business development versus a program. Now I had a little small sector that was mine, that I was over. Okay, I was responsible for Encore 3, which is a contract vehicle for all of the contracts coming out of DISA. And so my job was to put teams together. Okay, so I was able, IAPWS is a large business. With them, I was able to start joint ventures. I was able to look at small businesses that I could bring to the table and we can team with and go after certain efforts within the DISA community. They had certain capabilities. We would look at what the requirements were. And then I was responsible for from top to bottom. And so understanding when you're doing NCODP, you're responsible for top to bottom, all the different layers and what you have to do in order to achieve a successful program, the same transition. So anytime I got into a position, I always wanted to equate back, how did that mirror what I did on active duty and make sure that it transitioned effectively. And so I kind of understood all the different processes and putting those processes in place for NCODP, program director, same processes, same checklists. And if you are efficient like that, then you will be productive in your job. And so that's what I always use to navigate. Being a program director is tough. It's tough. It is really, really tough. Encore 3, having to go into DISA, get a customer intimacy requirements, what they needed, versus, putting a team together and making sure you're putting out a good product. Which you have to realize, again, your company is investing a lot of dollars and cents. And so you have to put out a very, very good product. You have to mature efforts. These are not things that just happen overnight. You have to develop relationships, customer intimacy, the program in itself. And so it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. I don't want anybody to think that, again, these sexy terms don't come out with a whole lot of work. All the titles, you can take any title that you want in the industry. They really don't care. What the title is, they want to see the product. But there are different definitions as far as in industry in relationship to business development, program manager versus program director. Those are, they're very, very close, but they're a little bit different. How much latitude do you have? So I'll share those things and hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, and so let me give a little additional context for folks that might be listening. So when Gerald's talking about the Encore 3, first of all, you got the customer, and that's a Defense Information Systems Agency, right? And that's the Department of Defense, basically IT organization that provides a wide breadth of IT services across the Department of Defense, and they have certain contracts that work in different areas of their responsibility. So Encore 3 was one of those contracts, and it's what we typically call a multi-award IDIQ contract, indefinite quality, indefinite quality, indefinite. I forgot what the acronym stands for right now, but anyway, you'd have multiple. It's an overarching contract that multiple organizations would compete for and win a prime position on, which means now when task orders come out on that contract, those awardees can now compete for those task orders and hopefully win them, which is what as a program director for the Encore 3 contract that Gerald was doing for IAP Worldwide Services. So I think that's very helpful. So and you still have an element of business development that you're responsible for, because like you said, you have to go into the customer, in this case DISA, and you have to develop those relationships. You have to you're already delivering on certain services, certain task orders that you're operating under right now, but you're constantly in search of what task orders might come out that you might want to compete for and try to win. So I think that gives a little bit of an idea of what the program director's types of responsibilities might be in a larger context for a defense contractor. So no, that's very helpful, Gerald. I appreciate it. So moving on, then you're now with Peraton. You've been there since a little over a year now, almost 2 years, right? And you're now again working another major effort, the Army Enterprise Information Technology as a Service contract as the operations manager. So again, a different role. And so what I'd like for you to maybe help our audience understand is how much different is that operations manager role for something like what you're doing now compared to a program director, compared to business development, just to give a little additional context to our audience.
And again, I wanted to be well-rounded. And so when I was approached for this position, I jumped at it. I jumped at it because I've been in so many different conferences, and every time we go to a conference, Howie, is always, what's the most important thing going on? And they talk about the network. Every 5 years, you hear every leader say the network, the network, the network, the network. And so finally, I was able to align myself with an opportunity that is going to impact our network. That was exciting for me.
And you're talking about the overall Army network enterprise now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about enterprise IT as a service, now you're actually combining strategic and tactical operations, and you're affecting the network. And this is something that we've been working on. And from an IT perspective, being a signaleer is near and dear to our heart, because warfighters always complaining about the network. What are you all doing to change the network? Why can't we use our phone this way? Why can't we use our computer that way? Well, the solution that Peraton and Microsoft has was such an exceptional solution. I could not walk away from it. And this was going to impact the Army and will impact the Army and for the next 25 years. We got 255 bases. And when you start looking at the infrastructure, both hardware and software, there's a lot of challenges to connect everybody to make sure that we're working collectively in the same direction. We got too many different networks out there. Enterprise, the ITAS services will solve a lot of these issues. And so being able to now go out to Fort Leavenworth to look at their infrastructure that was built way long ago and see how we can change that and do it for everyone, that incited me. And so this position that I'm currently in, as far as ITAS operation manager, now I'm able to still go out to all the different bases. I can make assessments. I can make those assessments, how to make the network better. I'm so excited about it, I can't talk, because we're doing great things and it's going to impact our Army. Anything that's going to impact our Army and enable our Army to be more efficient as far as the network enables me and excites me. So doing this right, it was a no-brainer. And I was asked from a very high source to come and do this job right here. I was happy at IAPS doing what I was doing, but this right here was something I couldn't turn down. Also, it builds my portfolio. Okay, it makes you well-rounded, makes you versatile. And I think for all of us, we cannot be a one-trick pony. Right. So if whatever I decide to do in the near future, if I decide to stay with ITAS or if I move, I'm still being well-rounded. I have a BD experience. I have program management experience, program director experience. I have operational manager experience. And so again, no different than in the military, you're building your resume.
Gerald, I love that you said you're so excited about it that you can't talk. I wish everyone could feel that way about their job. I really mean that. And that says a lot about you as a person. It also says a lot about the employer, the culture and the mission. Like I said, that's how I want my people to feel every day. I want them to want to be here, and I want to do everything I can to make them feel that way. So I think that that's amazing. Sounds like you're in a pretty mentally fit place. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but before we do, at every single episode, I give our guest a book title. So should you ever write a book, Gerald, I have come up with the title for your book. All right. Now, and Howie knows this. I come up with great titles. These are best-selling book titles. Okay. Like we had a guest, Lori Mo Buckout. She hasn't written it yet, but her book's going to be sold millions of dollars. And but I have your book title right here, and it's got a good title and a subtitle. Your book title, sir, is 4 Times Your Base Pay: How I Learned to Listen, Learn, and Lead by Gerald Tyce. That's what it is. 4 times your base pay. It's a good thing you didn't go back to him, because it would have been like 10 times your base pay. But yeah, 4 times your base pay: How I Learned to Listen, Learn, and Lead by Gerald Tyce. That's your book. All right. So you let me know when you want to write it. Howie will be right there with you.
All right. Well, I'll tell you this. I've been thinking about writing a book, and what I've titled it is as My Name is Tyce and I'm a Soldier.
I like that too. I obviously you go with whatever it is that's the right thing to go for you. Mine are just meant to be a little funny. No, but that's a great title as well. So, look, we alluded to this a minute ago, Gerald. We talk all the time about mental fitness. Okay, and our parent organization, Pivotal Moments, is seeking to strengthen mental fitness worldwide. That's why we're here, and obviously our channel, Charlie Mike, is about doing that with military families. We all struggle with our own mental fitness at times in varying degrees. You mentioned that earlier in the show, that you realized that when you transitioned out, that was something you had to focus on. If you're willing, could you share a little bit about the struggles you faced, or maybe you've seen others face? And what did you experience? What did you do to manage those challenges? How do you strengthen your mental fitness today? How did you do it then? Just explain to the people how you take on mental fitness and make it an important part of your day.
That's near and dear to my heart, really. From the time I became a non-commissioned officer, I was always responsible for soldiers and the welfare of their family. And you take that to heart. Every day you're responsible for somebody's son, somebody's daughter. That is a heavy burden to carry. From suicides I've seen from 21-year-olds, from bullying within our Army, to being on deployments where soldiers don't feel that they're adequate enough. They take a toll on you. I think my story was best when I was in Afghanistan and I ate by myself all the time. Nobody wants to come over to Sergeant Major and say, "Hey, Sergeant Major, how you doing?" We're responsible for saying, "Hey, how you doing, sir, soldier? You know what's going on with you." And dinner was always the time for me to kind of reflect, and go through the day. You're working 20-hour days on these deployments. And I've been deployed numerous times, over and over and over. But as a Sergeant Major, I think it really took a toll on me. And I did 2 tours. And one day a young man came over and he said, "Hey, Sergeant Major, how you doing?" I looked at him, I was like, wow, nobody ever asks a Sergeant Major how they're doing. They run away, they go in the opposite direction. Well, I said, wow. And so I spent some time, I talked to the soldier, and he was a private. And I would start looking I was always traveling in our country, so I would always look for him, and we would always have conversation. And then I missed him. I missed him twice. I missed him 3 times. Where's so-and-so? Oh, he went on a convoy and he got killed. He got killed. I carry that. Because he is the one person who took the opportunity and the time just to say, "Hey, Sergeant Major, how are you doing?" That still I still hear those whispers. I still see his face. That's tough. Young man who meant the best, served and didn't come back. And we have a lot of other cases like that. And it's difficult to process that. But during the time that you're there, you push through because you have so many other priorities, and you carry that. And when you get ready to transition, guess what happens? It's not there anymore, but that weight is still there and still burdened on you, and it mentally affects you. You don't know how it's doing it because it's silent, but it has an effect on you that is just undescribable. And you have to learn how to cope with it. So you have to go and seek professional help. And so you got to sit down and you got to talk to folks. Veterans, we have all kind of different groups that you can share information for. And that's one of the things that I was able to do during my 2 years. I was able to sit down and talk to folks. And they gave me some tools, in order to, be effective. We'll never be the same, but still be able to be effective and maneuver. I took up golf. I started going to different places that allowed me a little bit of latitude to exercise my mental fitness. And so it's, the wrong terminology as far as rehabbing. Nobody wants to be labeled as a rehab, but you have to rehab yourself. You got to do some things now to get back to the unknown normal. That's work. And a lot of us run away from it, but we have to embrace that. If we don't embrace it, we won't get any better. So I looked at golf. Golf is almost like my safe haven. It's my time now. I can go out and I can hit the ball in the woods. I don't care. But I can actually feel good because I'm thinking about those soldiers, and I can grieve. I can, process in my own little space. It's a balance. You talk about a balance between, you got three balls. You got your family, you got your career, and then you got yourself. Many, many years, we put our family first, we put our career first, and we put ourselves last. Well, we got to look at those balls that we're talking about juggling. They're glass balls. We can't drop any of those glass balls because if one ball drops and crashes, it impacts the two others.
Right.
And so as I share with other veterans, folks who are going through the same thing that I'm going through, I share with them, understand it's a glass ball and it's a juggling act. You can unbalance a little bit, but you got to balance things. And so sometimes we have to put time into ourselves. I don't care if it's a football game, basketball game, or whatever you think that, you can do for you. That's important. And so mental fitness for me is an everyday process. It doesn't go away. It's there for you. And if you don't deal with it and you don't look at it eye on eye, head on head, then you're going to have some struggles. I'm not saying every day is a good day for me because it's not. You have struggles. But again, once you see yourself struggling, you look for those places that can make you better. You look for your brothers to the right, to your left. When I talk to Howie, I don't care if we haven't talked in 4 months. It's like we talked yesterday. That's therapy. Being around brothers, who've gone through the same, brothers and sisters that have gone through the same fight that you've gone through. And they're going through the same fights. And you can identify, you can relate, and you share those moments, and it makes you better. Mark Clifton is one of my very, very good friends, and we served in Haiti. We didn't know what the hell we were going through until afterwards. We had mobs on us all the time, going from Port-au-Prince to Camp D application. And, you were afraid, but you were strong in the same way because you had to perform a job. We lived in austere environments. Those things over years and time, they just take a toll and they don't go away. And we have to embrace that it's not going to go away, but how do you actually deal with it? How do you make yourself better, even though you're going through it? And so I share with anybody listening, we have programs out there. Embrace the programs. Talk to your buddies. Don't get where you think that everything is all on your shoulders. You cannot carry that weight. You have to share that weight.
I think it's so important, to reiterate this. And that was a phenomenal answer, Gerald. I mean, phenomenal. Every point you made there, from the juggling balls being glass, I think that's a great analogy. And then what you're talking about with shared experience. And, it is, I think one of the things that we have found from interviewing people is that when people get to a dark mental place, they tend to feel they're alone. And the truth is that you're not alone, right? You have to search out people with shared experience. And also, in some ways you have to understand that you won't share that experience with people, and that's okay too, right? Like I said, when it comes to the military, and I know this for myself, I'm not going to sit here and tell anyone who's been in combat or active duty that I get it. I didn't serve that way, right? I understand that I don't understand, but I also know that there are others out there that have shared experiences that you have to search out. Same thing with spouses and families, and any type of mental challenges. The other thing I'll say, and I'll reiterate this because we do on this show quite a bit, is when it comes to mental fitness, and you mentioned, and this hit me, you mentioned the fact about nobody wants to be in rehab. Well, people tend not to have a problem being in rehab when it's physical fitness, right? When you hurt a shoulder or you hurt a body part, that's just part of it, right? You go, you see someone, they help you work on your physical fitness. It is no different mentally. That's why we use the terminology mental fitness, right? So if you take care of your body, which most people in the military do, you actually do know how to do this to a point, right? You have to equate it to physical fitness. You would never just work out one arm, right? So mental fitness, you take care of your body, your mind is part of your body. And if you're not doing the reps or the practices for your mental fitness, like Gerald, to use your analogy, one of those glass balls is in the air, right? And you need to be able to catch that. So I just think that was a phenomenal answer. And I just wanted to share a couple of those thoughts because you make me think about it. And what I love about this show and all the shows on Pivotal Moments, Howie, is we're constantly getting different definitions of mental fitness, physical fitness, obviously, but it's helped me grow, right? Just knowing that so many people are committed to this, that we are changing the conversation. And we are breaking that stigma. And a lot of it is just opening your mouth or approaching somebody and just talking. And Gerald, that's so important. You said that. You just talk to someone and it can really dramatically, like you said, not fix, but change the way you approach something, and that's so important. And by the way, I love that you play golf. Just to end this on a light note, golf taught me patience. I was an ice hockey player growing up. And I went to play golf, man. I'm like, I'm going to hit this thing 4,000 miles 4 times in a row. That's not how golf's played. You have to be very patient. You can have 3 bad shots and 1 good shot and still make par. It's an amazing teacher, that game. So that game taught me patience.
Yeah, it's my therapy. I play as much as I possibly can. I'll go out at 5 in the afternoon and just hit the ball. And again, it's not about, I'm not going to make the seniors tour, okay? I'm not that good.
Yeah.
But to go out, it gives me the time. I'm giving me the time. That's my mental fitness opportunity. And what I share with folks is about opportunities. The worst thing about an opportunity is a missed opportunity, okay? Take the opportunity to work on yourself.
Well, My name is Tyson. I am a soldier. I'm going to look for that on bookshelves. I'm not going to forget that one anytime soon. Howie, did you have any final thoughts before we?
Gerald, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us, for sharing your perspective, your experiences, being so incredibly thoughtful in your answers, candid, transparent, and vulnerable in your answers. I couldn't agree with Lee more that a phenomenal perspective on how to deal with strengthening mental fitness. And I'm just hopeful that folks who listen to it will see the same value that Lee and I saw in listening to your answer. And again, thank you for being with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And a happy Veterans Day to everyone again. And God bless you guys, and God bless America.
Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you, sir. And we'll sit here every day here at Charlie Mike is Veterans Day. We appreciate it. But no, today we are recording this again on Veterans Day. So everyone who served, thank you so much for your volunteer service from a civilian to you. It's appreciated. So you've been listening to Life After the Military, which is powered by Pivotal Moments Media. Again, you can learn more about our organization at pivotalmoments.org. We've got inspirational content such as this episode and other episodes. We have a ton of education. Again, we talked about resources. Pivotal Moments Media is a resource for you. And you can donate to worthy causes to help veterans and to strengthen mental fitness for all. So for Howie Cohen and Gerald Tyce, I'm Lee Elias. Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure to keep an eye out for more episodes of Life After the Military soon. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.